This is going to be my quick review of my first impressions of Remnant from the Ashes, a game that I bought on PS4 but is available on other consoles including Steam, that was released on the 20th of August, which is the day I am actually making this review. So this is first release impressions. The first thing you have to do obviously is create the character. Now the character creation screen was kind of lackluster at best. You just had a few face, hair, head options, the usual, and the same was for the woman option as well. A few hairstyles, the head, colours of the eyes, the hair, etc. It wasn't a massive amount of customizations, but I suppose it was the minimum to be satisfactory. Straight after this you had the intro cutscene, which tried to explain some of the story that was going on in the game, but unfortunately I didn't quite understand. I don't know whether I just glossed over it, or I just glossed out, or the story was a little convoluted. I didn't quite understand the story up to the point where the tutorial started, really. It was kind of quick, I don't know, it kind of felt like Dark Souls-y, kind of mysterious, but overall it was an okay cutscene. It wasn't glamorous, major. It used in-game models, so it wasn't exactly the most flashy cutscene either. After this, you were thrown straight into the tutorial. Now, the tutorial isn't nothing to write home about. It's just your basic crouch, go under here, melee attack this box to move on. The enemy pops out, and then you kill the enemy, and you keep moving on through the tutorial. Eventually you get to a point though where I think you're supposed to die. I tried to fight off the enemies, but I was so new to the controls and stuff, I wasn't used to where the sword was swinging, so I died. And then people came to get me and moved me to the next part of the game. This is where things started taking a turn for the worse, and unfortunately I realised about this point who actually made this game. I picked it up because I thought, oh, it's going to be a decent game, it looks decent, I've seen a couple of gameplay videos. Then I recognised that it's made by Gunfire Games, the people who made Darksiders, but unfortunately actually made Darksiders 3, one of the tarnished games on the series. And it wasn't exactly a good sign when this loaded up and this boy's textures were just not right. Now, I was one of the unfortunate souls to get Darksiders 3 when it first released, and it was, to put into a better word, ugly. It wasn't the nicest thing, and people's animations were actually really bad. I did have a video on this channel showing a few of the problems with Darksiders 3 on release, but I thought I'd delete it since Darksiders 3 has moved on, and unfortunately the only thing Gunfire Games has learnt since then is that they made this game digital only, so I can't actually sell this game back. Which is kind of unfortunate since the gameplay is pretty good, but you'll see later on down the review why I actually might feel a little one-sided to this review. So a little bit of running around later and I finally find the objective I'm supposed to go to, which is to turn on the power. And I find this woman and she instantly brings back the reason why Darksiders 3 was ugly at the start. The animations of her face are just so one-dimensional. Darksiders 3 had exactly the same problem, where people's mouths wouldn't move properly or their mouth would move very sharply when they would talk, and the overall animations would be a little bit janky. She then gives you the choices for your class for the game. Now, it doesn't seem like it'll impact the game very much, but for the start you can be a long-range user, a mid-range user, or a short-range user. That's basically the rundown of the classes. I picked long-range since it's a gun game, so I thought, why not go long-range? I could play Dark Souls if I want to get some melee action in. Now 4.5 minutes into the review we can actually get to the proper gameplay. This is the first time you get to use your guns on enemies, and the enemies are pretty simple. They have melee attacks, they have ranged attacks. It's the pretty basic enemies you start with. Nothing to write home about with the gunplay. It just feels like a third-person gunplay. If you've ever played a third-person shooter before, it literally feels like that. The melee attacks are a nice touch if you get close range. They can do decent damage, and against certain enemies will kill them quicker and easier than using your gun, so that's a nice touch. but overall it just feels pretty normal. There was a problem at the end of this little gameplay segment where the cutscene started, and again I will have to refer to Darksiders 3. It had this issue where Gunfire Games doesn't seem to be able to properly make games where the texture can load in time with the cutscenes. This is kind of jarring when you first see it, but you know, you kind of get used to it if you want to enjoy the game, but when it pops up all the time, when you're running around or you're talking to someone, it can get a little annoying. Now the next bit I'll keep pretty brief. You meet the NPCs, which are the shops. You got the nice guy, you got the woman, which for some reason is very grumpy with you and angry, and then you got John McCain from the Die Hard series, which helps you upgrade your weapons. After this, you pretty much move up to the main person in the area. She gives you a key to open some kind of lock that's locking up the checkpoint item, which is a big crystal. And then you pretty much go on your merry way out into the world. They give you a little bit of story, but it's just a little bit of story, it's nothing major. And then you're left to enjoy the game. Now this is the point of the game where the review will start to get a little controversial to what you might want to hear. And the big point I am going to make is, this looks like Darksiders 4. It looks like it's running on the same engine that Darksiders 3 did. It looks more apparent once you get into the overworld because everything kind of looks the same as the start of Darksiders 3 did. Probably the same reason why they have a lot of texture issues, the same as Darksiders 3 did. Now, again, the gameplay is pretty solid. There's nothing really to complain about it if you can get past the fact that this feels like a failed Darksiders 4 attempt and they just slap someone else into it, threw a couple of kind of Dark Souls qualities into it and tried to make a game, then you can actually enjoy it. But if you look too much into it, everywhere you turn you'll see something inspired or just straight up copied from another game, aka Dark Souls and Bonfires, or you can just see a brand new game which looks pretty good. The only problem with this is if you play Darksiders 3, then you'll just be seeing Darksiders 4 everywhere. Now my personal thoughts on whether it feels too much like a Darksiders game or a Dark Souls game, put them aside and we'll talk about the gameplay again. You saw I entered the sewers, which seems to be some sort of dungeon area. I'm just running through a dungeon. Doesn't seem too bad. Killing the enemies that are popping up, they don't seem too hard. There was a special enemy with some sort of minigun. Until I got to a point which didn't really feel like it belonged in the game. It was a weird red totem. I thought, right, I'm going to stay away from that, or should I destroy it? I chose to destroy it. And what appeared was the boss of the area. I found that later on was the actual boss that I thought I had to kill. I don't know whether it was some sort of scripted death or whether I had to run through the whole area, but I didn't have a clue and I died. So I went back to the same area and the boss didn't spawn. The red things were, one was still there, I destroyed it, the boss didn't spawn. But there was this Silent Hill motherfucker that was there. Big, 2 swords. I tried to shoot him, didn't work. So I ran from him, and there's a sped up segment going on now, which I ran for like what felt like 5 whole minutes away from this guy because I didn't know what to do. I was shooting him and it wasn't working. Now I thought he was immune on purpose for some reason. I thought there was, like I said, some more hidden red spires that made him weaken. But no, apparently he was just able to deflect every bullet that went against him until he tried to attack you and you could shoot him. Now I don't know why him having his swords crossed made him invulnerable to ammo, but once I found this out, it was kind of annoying because I don't like enemies that are just immune to damage completely no matter where you shoot them until they do a certain animation. It just feels like either they're immune to damage or they're not. If I shoot his legs, I should shoot his legs. But it felt a little weird and I moved on. So a little late commenting on this segment, but you saw me walk from the bonfire to a fog gate, and this is the boss again. Now I thought, right, I'm going to kill this boss, it's going to be pretty fun. I didn't realise that for some reason this boss came with 20 or 30 enemies. I don't know whether they were spawning or why there was just so many enemies. I just kept killing them, and I kept shooting the boss, and I kept killing the enemies, dodging the attacks. The reason why it felt so hard, I think, is the game isn't meant too much to be played solo. It is supposed to be a co-op game, and I hope it isn't the same for every boss, but this literally felt like it was meant for 3 people and I was soloing it. It was pretty tough. I died a few times and I got there in the end, but I had to kill like 20 of them each time I ran back into the room. It was just respawning all the time. Straight after this, I died to the bleed affliction. That doesn't seem to go away at all. It just stays there, makes you bleed. Kind of like Dark Souls, again, that makes you bleed over time and just doesn't go away until the bar is finished. Except this bleed seems to do a whole bar of health over its duration. So unless you got something to heal with, you're dead. So overall, for my first impressions review, I'm going to have to give this game a 6 out of 10. It's got decent gameplay, the graphics are okay when they're not popping in, which are the technical issues. It's got too many similarities with Darksiders 3, generally the overworld, the graphics, and it's got too much to do with Dark Souls as well, which is a little controversial to say, but it's blatantly obvious with the fog gate and the bonfire. The boss felt a bit too co-op based, the enemies were too numerous, it felt too busy. The game itself doesn't feel like it's worth £32 on the PS4, it feels more like £25. Like I said before, it feels like a failed Darksiders 4, which they kind of shoved a different character and a slightly different story into. 6 out of 10 is a decent rating. Hopefully it will go up by the end of the game, but for right now, its first impressions, this is what it gets. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.